Assalamualaikum. We are from Group 9 and we are going to present the comparison of ISO 14001, ISO 9001 and ISO 45001. My name is Siti Nur Imani Binti Mustafa and I am going to present Clause 4, Context of Organization. Clause 4 has 4 subclauses: understanding the organization and its context, understanding the needs and expectations and other interested parties, determining the scope and management system for each standard. For Clause 4.1, all standards are to determine the external and internal issues, meaning that they must know the issues happen outside and inside the organization. For subclause 4.2 is understanding the needs and expectations and other interested parties. For ISO 14001, the needs and expectations will become the compliant obligation. They must follow the regulatory from the legal compliance, while ISO 45001, the needs and expectation becomes the requirement, which is the legal one, and also for other requirements. For ISO 9001, which is the auditing, the organization shall monitor and review information about the interested parties for audit process. For the next subclauses is determining of the scopes for each standard. What differs between all these three standards? For ISO 14001, the organization shall consider its organizational units, function and physical boundaries and its authority and ability to exercise control and influence for maintenance. The scope for this standard shall be maintained as documented information and available to interested parties to use this standard. For ISO 9001, the organization shall consider the requirements or relevant interested parties to minimize the liability risk. So the organization shall apply the requirement of this standard if they are applicable within the determined scope and shall be maintained as documented for the use of other interested parties. It must take the types of products and services. Conformity can be claimed if the requirement does not affect the organization's ability for the company to ensure conformity of the products and enhance the customer satisfaction. For ISO 45001, the organization shall take into account the plan or perform work-related activities. It shall include the activities and products within the organization control that can impact the performance. The last subclause is the management system for the standards. For ISO 14001, the organization shall consider knowledge from the context of the organization about the external and internal issues and also the needs and expectations of the interested parties. For ISO 9001, the organization shall determine the process needed for auditing process as on the slide. Also, the organization shall maintain the documented information to support the processes and can also be the evidence on what was planned.
So, moving to clause number 5, it's about leadership. In each standards, there are 3 subclauses in clause 5. The first one is about leadership and commitment. The second subclause is about policy, and the third one, 5.3, about organizational roles, responsibilities, and authorities. There is an additional subclause in ISO 45001, which is 5.4, about consultation and participation of workers. So, moving to the first subclause, 5.1, about leadership and commitment. 5.1, so this is about EMS, leadership and commitment. This leadership and commitment subclause focusing on environmental management system. And this is for QMS, leadership and commitment. For this QMS, the difference is it's for the quality management system, and there is another one additional point. It's about promoting the uses of the process approach and risk-based thinking. This is the last ISO in subclause 5.1. The difference between EMS and QMS, this OH and SMS have 5 additional points. A, J, K, L, and M are the new additional points in this subclass. So these are the policies 5.2 for policies for EMS, QMS, and OH and SMS. Between these Among these three policies, there are not so much difference, but in their context, like EMS, they are focused on environmental impacts. QMS, they are focused in strategic direction for qualities, and the OH and S is about commitment to provide safety and health working conditions for their workers. These are the three organizational roles, responsibilities, and authorities subclause for EMS, QMS, and OH and SMS. So the difference that we can see here that QMS have uh, three additional points for its 5.3 subclause, which is ensuring the process and delivering the intended output, ensuring the promotion of customer focus throughout the organizations, and ensuring that the integrity of the quality management system is maintained when changes to the quality management system are planned and implemented. So this is 5.4, only have inside ISO 45001, OH and SMS about consultation and participation of workers. So for subclass 5.4, they have 5 points, which is A, B, C, then continued with D, which followed by 9 subpoints, and then E, followed by 7 subpoints. These are 5.4 consultation and participation of workers that only have inside OH and SMS. That's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Nur Shahira and I will present class 6 planning. 6.1 Action to address risk and opportunity. 6.1.1 in ISO 14001, organization shall establish, implement and maintain the process needed to meet the requirement. Organization shall determine the potential emergency situation, including one that can have environmental impact. In ISO 9001, organization shall consider issue in 4.1 context, requirement in 4.2 interested party, and risk and opportunity. In ISO 45001, organization shall take into account the hazard, OHS risk and other risk, OHS opportunity and other opportunity, legal requirement and other requirement. In case of plan changes, permanent or temporary, the assessment shall be undertaken before change is implemented. 6.1.2 In ISO 14001, organization shall determine the aspect of the activity, product, services and impact considering a life cycle perspective. In ISO 9001, organization shall plan how to integrate and implement the action into its processes and evaluate the effectiveness. In ISO 45001, it divided into 3 subclass, and the first one, 6.1.2.1, organization shall establish, implement and maintain a process for hazard identification that is ongoing and proactive but not limited to how work is organized, social factor, leadership and culture, routine and non-routine, past relevant incident, potential emergency situation, people, other issue, actual or proposed changes in organization, changes in knowledge, and information about hazard. 6.1.2.2 Assess risks from identified hazard while taking into account effectiveness of existing controls. Determine and assess the other risks. Organization methodology and criteria for the assessment shall be defined with respect to their scope, nature and timing to ensure they are proactive rather than reactive and are used in systematic way. 6.1.2.3 OHS opportunity to enhance its performance and other opportunity for improving management system. 6.1.3 in ISO 14001 is about how organizations determine and have access to to compliance obligation and how this apply to organization. While in 45001, it's about legal requirement and other requirement and what need to be communicated. 6.1.4 in ISO 14001, organization shall plan to take action to address its significant environmental aspect, combine obligation, risks and opportunity. In 45001, address the risk and opportunity, address legal requirement and other requirement, prepare for and respond to emergency situation. 6.2 Objective and planning to achieve them. 6.2.1 in ISO 14001, the objective must include the aspect compliance obligation and risk and opportunity. In ISO 9001, objectives shall be relevant to conformity of product and services and to enhance customer satisfaction. In ISO 45001, objectives must include result of assessment of risk and opportunity, consultation with worker where they assist and worker representative. 6.2.2 in ISO 14001, organization shall determine how the result will be evaluated, including indicator for monitoring progress. In ISO 45001, organization shall maintain and retain documented information, objective and plan to achieve them. 6.3 Planning of changes. When organization determine the need of changes, they must consider the purpose, the integrity, availability of resources, allocation or reallocation of responsibility and authority.
So I will continue on clause 7. Clause 7 consists of 5 sub-clauses. First one is 71, which is resources. For resources, the differences that we can see, for ISO 14001, the organization need to determine and provide resources needed for establishment, implementation, maintenance, and continual improvement of EMS. While the same thing applied to ISO 9001 and ISO 45001, but it focuses on for ISO 9001, it focus on quality management system, and for ISO 45001, it focus on OH&S management system. Next, 7.2, which is competence. The differences that can be found from the three standards. For ISO 40001, the competent person that affects environmental performance and ability to fulfill compliance obligations. While for ISO 9001, the competent person must be the one that affects the performance and effectiveness of quality management system. While ISO 45001, the competence of workers that affects or may affect its OH&S performance. In this subclause, for the three standards, they need to ensure these persons are competent with education, training, and experience. But for ISO 45001, they need to ensure these workers competent with education, training, and experience that include the ability to identify hazard. For 7.3, which is awareness, for ISO 40001 and 9001, the organization need to ensure that the person work under organizational control are aware of environmental policy and environmental aspect for ISO 40001 and quality policy and relevant quality objectives for ISO 9001. ISO 45001, on the other hand, the organization need to ensure workers aware of OH&S policy and OH&S objectives. Next is clause 7.4, which is communication. For ISO 40001, the organization need to implement and maintain process needed for internal and external communication relevant to environmental management system. While for ISO 9001, the organization need to determine internal and external communication relevant to quality management system. While for ISO 45001, the organization need to implement and maintain process of needed in internal and external communication relevant to OH&S management system. Next, the organization for ISO 14001, the organization need to take into account compliance obligation during communication processes. While for ISO 45001, the organization need to take into account legal requirements during communication processes. For ISO 9001, there is no requirements needed for the organization. And then for ISO 14001, okay, the organization also need to ensure environmental information communicated is consistent with information generated within EMS and it's also reliable. For ISO 45001, okay, the organization need to ensure OH&S information communicated is consistent with the information generated within OH&S management system and also reliable. Lastly, 7.5, which is documented information. The difference that can be found from the three standards is for ISO 45001, okay, the documented information is needed to demonstrate fulfillment of compliance obligations. While for ISO 45001, okay, the documented information is needed for demonstrate the fulfillment of legal requirements and other requirements.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Nur Anisha Mitidali. I would like to present Clause 8 which is operation. Under Clause 8, have 8.1 which is operational planning and control. There are three standards which is ISO 40001, ISO 90001 and ISO 45001. These three standards have comparison, which is ISO 40001 needed to meet environmental management system requirements and to implement the action identified in 6.1 and 6.2, which is establishing operating criteria for the processes, while ISO 19001 needed to meet the requirements for the provision of product and service and to implement the action determined in Clause 6, which is determining the requirements for the products and service, while ISO 45001 under 8.1 have 8.1.1 which is general, needed to meet requirements of the OH&S management system and to implement the action determined in Clause 6, which is establishing criteria for the processes. State is ISO 40001 or it need organization show control plane changes and review the consequences of unintended changes, taking action to mitigate any adverse effect as necessary. Organizations show ensure that outsources processes are controlled or influenced. While ISO 9001, organizations show control plan changes and review the consequences of unintended changes, taking action to mitigate any adverse effects and as necessary, and the organization should ensure that outsourced processes are controlled. While ISO 45001 at multi-employer workplaces, organizations should coordinate the relevant parts of the OH&S management system with the other organization. And the last one is 8.2, which is emergency preparedness and response. ISO 40001 need to prepare for and respond to potential emergency situations identified in 6.1, which prepare to respond by planning action to prevent or mitigate adverse environmental impacts for emergency situations. While ISO 9001 under 8.2 have 8.2.1, which is customer communication. Communication with customers should include providing information relating to product and service. While ISO 45001 need to prepare for and respond to potential emergency situation as identified in 6.1.1, which is establishing a plan response to emergency situation, including the provision of first aid. That's all from me. Thank you.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Nona Zatullah Shikin binti Rashdi. You will explain about the comparison for class 9 and 10 between ISO 14001, 19001, and 45001. In class 9, performance evaluation, class 9.1, monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation. In 9.1.1, general, for ISO 14001, organization evaluates the environmental performance and the effectiveness of environmental management system. ISO 19001, organization evaluates the performance and the effectiveness of the quality management system. ISO 45001 evaluates the occupational health and safety (OHS) performance and the effectiveness of OHS management system. ISO 14001 written documented information as in evidence of monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation result. ISO 19001 written documented information as evidence of result. ISO 45001 written documented information as evidence of result, monitoring, measurement, analysis, and performance evaluation on the maintenance, calibration, and verification of measuring instruments. Next, ISO 19001 also focus on customer satisfaction, but not in ISO 14001 and 45001. The organization monitoring customer perception of the degree to which their needs has been fulfilled. ISO 14001 9.1.2 Evaluation of Compliance. The organization establish, implement, maintain the process needed to fulfill its compliance obligation. While for ISO 19001 9.1.3 Analysis and evaluate data and information arising from monitoring and measurement. For ISO 45001 9.1.3 Evaluation of Compliance, organization establish, implement, maintain a process for evaluating compliance with legal requirements and other requirements. Clause 9.2 Internal Audit for ISO 19001 comply organization on requirement for its environmental management. For ISO 19001 comply organization on requirement for quality management system, and for ISO 14001 comply organization on requirement for its OHS management system. For 9.1.2 ISO 19001 and 9001, their organization ensure the result of audit reported to the relevant management, while ISO 45001, the organization ensure the result of audit reported to the relevant manager. Next, Clause 9.3 Management Review. For ISO 14001, review the organizational environmental management system. ISO 19001, review the organization quality management system, while ISO 14001, review the organizational OH management system. For management review inputs, in ISO 14001, management review include consideration of information on organization, environment, performance, including trends and fulfillment of compliance obligation. In ISO 19001, include consideration of information on quality management system, including trend in customer satisfaction and feedback from interested parties. And for ISO 45001, management review include information on the OH performance, including trends in consultation and employee participation. For management review output, the comparison between those three ISO are ISO 14001 outputs include conclusion about the continuing suitability, adequacy of environmental management system, while ISO 45001 output include the continuous stability of the OH management system in achieving intended outcome. Next, Class 10 Improvement. In general, ISO 14001 focusing on change for improvement and in the action to achieve intended outcome for environmental management system. In ISO 19001 focusing on improvement product and service, also necessary action to fulfill customer satisfaction. For ISO 19001 and 45001, focusing on change for improvement and needed action to achieve the intended outcome of OSH management system. For ISO 14001 and 19001, subclause 10.1.2 known as nonconformity and correctivation, and subclause for ISO 45001 known as incident, nonconformity, and corrective actions. ISO 14001 make change to the environmental management system. ISO 19001 make change to the quality management system, and ISO 45001 make change to the OH management system. Reviewing and assessment of OH risk and evaluate participant of the workers or interested parties. Next, Clause 10.3, which is continual improvement. For ISO 14001, the organization improves suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness of environmental management system to improve environmental performance. ISO 19001 improves suitability and adequacy of quality management system and consider the result of analysis and outputs from management review. And the last one, ISO 45001 improves suitability, the adequacy and effectiveness of overseas management system. That's all from us. Thank you.